Let's start with Amy Iwasaki's talk, in which she will share findings from a global survey that ICROM conducted on how collection impacts on people's lives. If you have questions for Amy, just a reminder here, please don't forget to put them into the Q&A box for later discussion. So let's watch the presentation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Iwasaki, and for this lightning talk, I'll be sharing insights from an ICROM survey that sought to understand why heritage collections matter to people around the world, drawing for both a published paper in the International Journal of Heritage Studies that looks at the full results, and my master's dissertation from the University of Cambridge that studied the same survey dataset from a well-being lens. Imagine the world without cultural heritage collections. No more libraries, archives, museums, treasured artifacts in temples, cultural centers, and communities. How big a difference do you think this would make in your life? While preparing to launch the Our Collections Matter initiative, this is the question that ICROM posed to the global public in an open online survey. Offered in 22 different languages, the short survey invited anyone of all ages and walks of life to rate the impact of losing heritage collections on a 7-point Likert scale ranging from huge to no impact. Between October 2018 and December 2019, ICROM received nearly 2,400 responses. And as you'll see from these graphics, the survey reached diverse populations with respondents ranging from ages 9 to 88 years old from 103 different countries. In the two studies, we used mixed method approaches combining simple and multivariate statistical methods with qualitative analysis. And here I used a method called coding to thematically analyze respondents' own words around how collections impact their lives. Before moving to the results, I just want to indicate a couple of important points for interpreting the results. While our survey sample was diverse, just about 7% of respondents came from the Arab states or Africa. And meanwhile, a third reported working in the cultural or heritage sectors. Overwhelmingly, survey respondents reported that losing the world's heritage collections would significantly impact their lives. In fact, 81% of respondents indicated the impact would be very large or huge, while just 3% said that the impact would be small, very small, or none. Even when considering that those who took the survey likely had a greater than average personal or professional connection to heritage collections, the results were overwhelmingly positive. As for why people felt collections, and even heritage more broadly, impact their lives, some of the top impacts discussed included how they contribute to a sense of individual or collective identity, roots, and social belonging. Others discussed how collections help provide a sense of continuity over time, connecting the past, present, and the future. Many others valued collections as tangible traces of history and memory. This takes us now to the second study, which approached the same survey dataset from a specific lens of well-being. Here, I omitted all responses from cultural or heritage professionals and focused specifically on the three regions that each produced a significant number of responses: Asia Pacific, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and what we might call the West, which includes Europe, North America, Australia, and New Zealand. I used the same method of qualitative analysis to code each of these three regional subsets before mapping the resulting themes of impacts onto Linton et al.'s integrated well-being framework. While heritage is more often linked to social or mental well-being, across all regions, the top-cited contribution of heritage collections was surprisingly to the category of spiritual well-being, which is a marginalized dimension in broader health research. Spiritual, or what some call existential well-being, doesn't necessarily specifically concern religion, but more broadly the meanings and connections that give our lives purpose. For instance, it relates to the meanings we assign to ourselves, our identities, or to others in the world around us. It relates to a sense of connection to something greater than ourselves, and many discussed how heritage, art, and culture make them feel connected to broader humanity. For others, it was about time, feeling a sense of connection and purpose about the past, our ancestors, and future generations. So what does this all tell us about why heritage matters? The framework of well-being is useful in that it accommodates a broad understanding of heritage value, beyond just economic or material terms, and indeed while focusing on the value of collections to activities slash functioning, material circumstances, and physical well-being might be useful in different cases, there are clearly real limits to assessing heritage value in these terms. To really capture why heritage matters to people, we need to better articulate the more abstract well-being concepts that heritage makes significant contributions to, including the spiritual, mental, and social dimensions. And with that, I've shared a bit of research very quickly showing how collections hold significant value for people worldwide, and some considerations for thinking about heritage values to people and societies moving forward. This is really just a teaser of the full findings, so I invite you to explore these studies further in your own time. And thank you all so much for listening.
Thanks to Amy, who will be joining us for the Q&A shortly. So again, please, if you have questions, please put them into the Q&A box for the discussion later on. In the next presentation, Fernanda Castro, the president of the Brazilian Institute of Museums, explores how Brazil's museum policies, which are grounded in professional management and social participation, contribute to inclusive governance and cultural sustainability, aligning with global efforts to address multidimensional poverty through democratic access and participation. Again, if you have questions for Fernanda, please put them in the Q&A box and identify the question recipient. And with that, I think we can move on to watch Fernanda Castro's presentation.
Hi, I'm Fernanda Castro, a public servant with the Brazilian Institute of Museums, IBRAM, and currently serving as its president. I am a short, plump white woman with shoulder-length curly brown hair, and I'm wearing a blue dress. Today, I'm here to talk about how IBRAM has been working to expand social participation and to professionalize its structure and its public policies for museums in Brazil, fostering connections between people and collections, with a focus on developing museums and memory institutions as places for meeting, learning, and building citizenship and democracy. There are almost 400,000 museums and memory institutions in Brazil, and the majority are public or community institutions. For nearly 6 years, the field of culture and memory had been attacked and demobilized, and it was the people who make up these institutions who kept many projects and actions alive and resilient. Among their political and structural challenges, Brazilian museums have faced the COVID-19 pandemic, climate emergencies, and a period of political repression and scientific and cultural obscurantism. By transforming themselves into vaccination centers, food and supply collection and distribution points, or veritable training and organization centers for tackling social problems. In this context, social participation, consolidated through different mechanisms, legal instruments, and digital tools, has transformed the relationships between individuals and institutions, especially by changing collections into true representations of society challenges. Museums are created through participatory inventories, as in the case of the Hip Hop Museum of Rio Grande do Sul, the first in Latin America, which features a community garden, training courses for children and youth, and a community studio. The Museum of the Person transforms life stories into digital collections and connects different people and communities in the continent spanning country of Brazil, contributing to the preservation of languages, customs, and diverse ways of life and relationships with nature and environment. Traditional museums are not exception. One example is the National History Museum, affiliated with IBRAM, which over the past 2 decades has brought together diverse and historically marginalized social groups in memory to recount or reconstruct their stories collectively, enhancing and transforming one of the country's largest collections. IBRAM, with its 31 affiliated units, engages in politics at the forefront down to the museum floor, with the public and serving as a reference for all of the more than 4,000 Brazilian museums. In Brazil and around the world, we collectively build policies and actions that integrate people and collections, aiming to strengthen museums as spaces for building democracy and the collective memory of all. In doing so, our museums contribute to reducing multidimensional poverty nationally and at the community level, and to solving crises and acting to strengthen the SDGs and the 2030 Agenda.
Okay, so moving on, the next presentation by Aubert showcases how FAO's library and museum collections support its global mission of achieving food security and healthy diets for all, preserving cultural heritage and traditional knowledge as vital tools for education, policy, and sustainable food systems. So if you have questions for Anne, as usual, please put them into the Q&A pane. Let's watch Anne's presentation.
Good morning, good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be at the ICROM conference. My name is Aubert and I work for FAO. Today, I would like to share with you some thoughts on how FAO contributes to cultural heritage and helps people to connect with their traditional knowledge. And most importantly, how this knowledge can travel through generations. FAO and ICROM share some key common values and have engaged in a dynamic partnership that bridges cultural heritage and sustainable development. And we have a strong emphasis on food systems and museum development in this partnership. In fact, at the heart of the collaboration, we have a FAO Global Museum and Network Initiative that will be inaugurated very soon on 16 October 2025 to mark FAO's 80th anniversary. This museum is called FAO Mune. FAO is a specialized agency of the United Nations. It was created in 1945 and it is dedicated to food and agriculture. Let me show you a very short video about FAO. So in addition to what you have seen in this video, I will add that FAO is a knowledge organization and it has a responsibility to disseminate and make accessible all the knowledge produced in all these years. The most reliable way for sharing knowledge is through publications. And I'm not saying this because I'm the head of the publications branch. We know that a publication compared to a website, a video, or a social media channel is a reference over time. It provides a sort of quality stamp of what was written on a certain date by specific authors and on a given topic. So we can say that publications have a long lifespan, and in fact, it has no limit in time. And this is why publications are so important to share knowledge. In fact, in the FAO library, we have more than 400 rare books. Some are from the 18th century. We also have manuscripts from Aristotle and Virgilio and a very special collection from China that was commissioned by Emperor Kangxi and published in 1696. All this knowledge has been collected over time, and after thousands of generations, it is still accessible. And today, with the technology that we have and the digital transformation that we have seen over the past years, this knowledge is also accessible online just by opening a browser. Our little treasure to make this possible in FAO is what we call the FAO Knowledge Repository. It is a platform that saw the light in 1998, so 27 years ago, and today it contains more than 150,000 documents. It is a place where all knowledge products published by FAO are accessible, and we are also digitizing all FAO historical collections so that we can cover all the knowledge produced by the organization in the past 80 years. As you have seen in the first video, FAO is celebrating its 80th anniversary, and I will show you another very short video on the museum. And it will just give you an overview of how it will be organized. So we hope to see you there. If you have a chance to come to Rome, please come and visit the museum. The purpose, as you have seen, is really to unlock inspiring collections for the world today and for future generations. I will conclude by saying that we are very proud to have a partnership with ICROM and to contribute to the preservation of cultural heritage. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. So look forward to continue the conversation with you in the Q&A session. This next presentation is co-authored by Katerina Mavromichali and Dominik Havsteen-Franklin, and it reveals how creative engagement with heritage collections in museums, libraries, and archives can drive measurable improvements in mental health and well-being, thus positioning culture-based institutions as powerful allies in public health, social resilience, and sustainable development. So if you have questions for them, please don't forget to put them in the Q&A pane. Let's watch the presentation delivered by Dominik.
So good morning, and thank you so much for this invitation to present today. My name is Dominik Havsteen-Franklin. And my colleague, unfortunately, Katerina Mavromichali, unfortunately can't make it because she's unwell. So I'll be reading her parts as well to include her voice on what's a very important topic. Yeah, so we're going to be focusing on this specific way in which creativity enables engagement, health, well-being, and so forth. Essentially, museums as guardians of our collective memory and catalysts for future innovation uniquely connects us with our heritage, challenges perspectives, and inspires new ways of well-being. So when individuals engage with museum collections or participate in gallery-based practices, they activate what neuroscientists term the default mode network. And this is important because it's the brain regions associated with self-referential processing, memory consolidation, and imaginative cognition. This activation occurs through what we have identified as 3 primary mechanisms. The first mechanism is sensory motor integration. So actually physically being there in an embodied state in relation to the arts. The second thing is symbolic expression. So how we begin to build nuanced representations of experience or of the world. And this collective meaning making, that this happens in a social cultural context, and the meaning making happens in situ. So as you are part of the exhibition or the collection, you are making sense of with those around you and with that particular environment. It's being reframed, so to speak. So, and this is something from Katerina, her pilot on art on prescription. This particular research program she's been focusing on over the last couple of years is about referral to non-medical sources of support within the community that may provide complementary benefit. It's a strengths-based and recovery-orientated and includes a series of community non-medical art sessions. She goes on to say, in her study, 384 participants with psychiatric diagnoses took part in structured, group-based art sessions across major cultural institutions. The data from the randomized controlled trial of the first pilot phase led by Professor Stefanis showed significant reductions in anxiety and depression scores compared to controls. So using this mixed methods, quantitative and qualitative focus groups, and arts-based visual research, her team found that creative engagement enhanced mental well-being by fostering self-awareness, empathy, and social connection. So Katerina and her team, the data also showed something which I think was really remarkable, that participants who received their first choice of cultural activity showed similar outcomes as those assigned alternative options. Fundamentally, this differs from traditional models of therapeutic practice because participants engage with existing cultural discourses. They're not trying to create something improvised and new just from their personal experience. We bring this into a wide, complex social context. The recent UK economic analysis shows that every £1 invested in creative museum programs, it looks like health economic data reveals that £4.43 in mental health service cost reduction. Yeah, so every £1 that's invested produces a 450% reduction in cost of mental health requirements. As we expand these programs internationally, we must remember that creativity represents humanity's capacity to produce hope and sensitivity where there's been pain or suffering. We believe that cultural institutions are uniquely positioned to nurture this capacity, to activate well-being and open pathways for change across complex systems and social environments. This requires innovative, high-impact partnerships, cross-disciplinary research and education, policy grounded in evidence-based evaluation, and strategies that link short-term initiatives with long-term transformation. So thank you for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks to Dominik for delivering the presentation. And again, questions please in the Q&A box. So we'll move on to the next presentation, where Gaby Franger and Tijana Šević explore how women's museums around the world are reshaping the museum field in terms of using collections to challenge dominant narratives elevate overlooked histories, and advance gender equality through inclusive and activist curatorial practices. Again, questions for the speakers, please do not hesitate to use the Q&A panel. Let's watch the presentation.
Listen to the voices of women.
In the museum field, it has long been recognized that the creation and management of collections involves more than the preservation of exceptional objects as testimonies to human achievements. It carries the profound responsibility of deciding what is remembered and what is forgotten. Collections offer not only access to significant artifacts, but also serve as entry points into personal histories, rights, and power structures.
Since the 1980s, feminist artists and activists have not only critically examined the value system that shape decisions in museological practices, they also explored alternative approaches to museology. They focused on questioning what is deemed worthy of preservation, whose stories have been marginalized, misrepresented, or erased from institutional narratives. These critical interventions emerged across various countries and led to the founding of the International Association of Women's Museums, IAWM, in 2008, and its formal establishment as a registered organization in 2012.
6 goals lead our mission.
To promote culture, arts, education, and training from a gender perspective.
To foster exchange, networking, mutual support, and global cooperation among women's museums.
To conduct research and the development of projects, exhibitions, new initiatives, community activities, seminars, and conferences.
To promote and strengthen the acceptance of women's and gender museums worldwide.
To achieve international recognition in the world of museums.
And to advocate for women's rights and a gender democratic society.
Collections in women's museums are thoughtfully created to highlight the diverse experiences, contributions, and creativity of women across time and cultures. They often focus on areas such as
local and global women's history and culture.
Women's artistic expression, both historical and contemporary.
Women's ingenuity and innovations in everyday life and beyond. For example, Josephine Cochrane invented the first dishwasher in 1886. At the World Exhibition in her hometown of Chicago in 1893, she won first prize for Best Mechanical Design. However, the award went to Mr. Cochrane, the name she entered under, as women were not admitted to the World Exhibition.
And such as personal narratives that situate small histories within the broader framework of dominant historical narratives.
To this day, housework is still considered a female task. Professional women often delegate a big part of their daily housework to other, mostly migrant women. Today, there is a chain of migrant women around the world who are employed primarily in the domain of cleaning, cooking, and caring.
Although women do not participate in deep-sea fishing, they play a major role in receiving cargo, marketing it, and processing fish into salted, smoked, and dried products consumed in West and Central Africa. They contribute much more than is commonly believed to family income and are active in the country's development.
Integrating a gender perspective into the interpretation of collections requires the continuous questioning of representations and the contextualization of objects within broader historical, social, and cultural frameworks. This approach reveals how symbolic gender identities, roles, relationships, and representations have been constructed, maintained, and contested over time. By addressing imbalances and making women visible in collections, museums can become powerful platforms for change and active contributors to gender equality. In doing so, collections move beyond preservation to serve as tools for advocacy and the creation of a more gender-just society.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So big thanks to Gaby and Tijana, who will be also joining us shortly for the Q&A session. Now moving on to the last lightning talk, where Claire McGuire from IFLA makes the case for libraries worldwide as powerful drivers of sustainable development, showing how their collections, their spaces, and staff promote access to information, lifelong learning, and cultural inclusion at the heart of the people dimension of sustainable development. So let's watch the presentation by Claire.
Hello, my name is Claire McGuire, Policy and Advocacy Manager at the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. Thank you to ICROM for the invitation to give this lightning talk, in which I will present a case for how libraries, through their collections, as well as their spaces and staff, help drive progress on the people dimension of sustainable development. I will start broadly with IFLA's strong conviction that we cannot achieve sustainable development without a concentrated effort on achieving access to information for all. Since the negotiating process of the post-2015 UN Development Framework, IFLA has advocated for the role of access to information as an essential precondition for development. Without it, decision-making is poorer, democracy is weaker, and progress is slower. Without it, we cannot achieve social inclusion, equity, and human rights for all. It is essential to recognize that in the world today, this includes access to information both physically as well as in the digital environment. Meaningful access can only happen when there is universal connectivity, equity in societies, and access to the rights and skills to produce and use this information. Last year, IFLA and partners published the 2024 Development and Access to Information Report. It found that progress on connectivity is not matched by advances elsewhere. There is a huge need to promote a comprehensive and holistic approach to access to information. As memory and collections institutions, libraries are critical infrastructure for realizing this goal. With 2.5 million institutions worldwide, libraries have a strong track record of delivering meaningful access to information that leaves no one behind. This includes, but also extends beyond collections. Librarians are skilled information professionals who can be strong partners in increasing access to information, as well as the ability to use it and navigate the information environment. They can help people gain the information literacy skills needed to improve their lives. Their collections can have an impact across the development agenda. For example, libraries have curated agricultural research and data on how to make crops more productive and sustainable. They have provided public access to health and wellness information and shared resources to help people develop the skills needed for education and employment. Let's look specifically at how library collections support education and lifelong learning. I will point to 2 resources that establish a core understanding of the mission of libraries within this element of sustainable development. The updated IFLA UNESCO School Library Manifesto was endorsed in April 2025. It declares that the school library program improves and enhances teaching and learning for the entire school community. Their collections and the learning experiences around them contribute to active collaborations for literacies, critical thinking, creativity, and global citizenship. The IFLA UNESCO Public Library Manifesto proclaims UNESCO's belief in the public library as a living force for education, culture, and information, and as an essential agent for the fostering of peace and welfare through the minds of people. Collections in all types of libraries, from schools to communities to the national collection, help community members see themselves reflected in society. For example, libraries in countries that have populations of displaced persons, refugees, migrants, immigrants, asylum seekers, have made concentrated efforts to build the collection in order to engage these groups. both through collections in mother languages, as well as learning materials for new languages. And this brings me to my final point of this short talk, the role of documentary heritage in promoting inclusive, just, and peaceful societies. Collections can contribute to multiculturalism and linguistic diversity, peace building, and reconciliation. This can be achieved both through the materials collected, but also through the dialogue process surrounding the collections themselves. The benefits of documentary heritage cannot happen without the spaces and opportunities for people to explore it, to encounter these stories, to discuss and use them in research, and to inspire their own creative and academic pursuits. This is why our spaces and our people are so critical. From preservation and restoration to education and dialogue, it cannot happen without them. To conclude, having access to collections that reflect one's cultural and linguistic heritage is a part of the right for all people to participate in the cultural life of the community. This is an essential aspect of upholding human rights across the board and cultural rights specifically. As champions of freedom of expression, cultural rights defenders, essential infrastructure for access to information and knowledge, and spaces for dialogue and lifelong learning, libraries both contribute directly to improving lives within their communities and advocate on a larger scale for essential enablers of sustainable development, in this case, being knowledge, information, and culture. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, so with that, we conclude the series of lightning talks. I hope it's been inspiring. And as we saw, I mean, went across different aspects of sustainable development, from reducing poverty, supporting food security, gender equality, mental health across the board.